where if you leave this room today and never see me again or have any interaction with my company, hopefully we're going to show you and teach you maybe 2 to 3 things that you can take with you today that can help you, your family, or your employees that you're responsible for. So to tell you just a little bit about myself, my name is Joe Fox, and I'm the president of a company called Train Smart Personal Fitness. And what we do is we integrate strength and conditioning, physical therapy, and nutrition to help our clients to feel great, to be strong, and to thrive, so that they can live their life to the fullest without limitations. And those limitations are different for everybody. It could mean for Dr. Maynard here to be able to golf without pain, or to be able to go scuba diving. It could mean to be able to garden as much as you would like, or to run without pain, or to be able to ski, or play with your grandchildren, etc. It could mean a lot of different things. And as we get started, I'm going to give you a little bit of a blow-by-blow or biography of how I got into this. So, when I was 19 years old, I was a New York State powerlifting champion. I lifted 530 pounds at a body weight of 162, and I had low back pain. I had a herniated disc in my low back, and I started on this journey a very long time ago, because if you haven't noticed, I'm not 19 anymore. And during that journey, I went to my primary care physician. I went to chiropractors. I went to physical therapists. I went to orthopedic surgeons. I went to personal trainers. I went to a lot of different people, and it was really hard for me to get help. It seemed like nobody could help me. And then one day, I was walking out of a physical therapy clinic, and I saw this article right there lying on a chair. And that article really turned things around for me. It was really important for me. It changed my life. And the article started out by saying, are you sitting on a time bomb? If you're desk bound, or in other words, if your job requires you to kind of be a slave to your desk, your back is doomed unless you learn to love and protect your spinal curve. Here's how. And that got it started. None of the doctors and the clinicians and the practitioners that I met with really helped me all that much. But I read that article and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy gets it. So that's Dr. Stuart McGill, and he is the undisputed leading authority on low back pain in world history. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to have heard him speak over 8 different times. I recently went to a 4-day course that he taught here in Buffalo back in March. And maybe about 2 months ago, I was at his house. He lives about 4 hours away from here. And we were working with a patient together, and that was just such a great learning experience. I remember the first time I went to hear him speak, I got to the presentation an hour and a half early. I was the first person there. I sat in the first seat, first row. He tripped on me coming in, and he said, boy, I'm going to spit all over you. And I'm like, oh, it's all good. I was so excited. So, a few really important principles I'd like to share with you today. So, there's a lot of things that happen when we sit, and the first thing that I need is a volunteer. So I need somebody to volunteer. Please volunteer yourself, or I will pick you. Are you volunteering or going to the other side of the room?
I would volunteer, sure.
All right, great, thank you. And what I'm going to do is it okay if I move this purse and this jacket? Because I'm going to use this chair, and if we need another chair, if somebody could please put one over here, that would be great. And what I'm going to have you do is, I'm going to move this mat, but I'm going to have you sit on the chair facing that way, please. Now, another thing that I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, if you're comfortable, if you don't have a medical restriction, to please take off your right shoe and put it on the table. If you're able to comfortably do that without being in pain, I'd like you to do that, please. It will be worth it.
All of us?
Yes, please, if you're comfortable doing it.
Sure.
Okay, So, if I could rein everybody in, I want you to, if you would, I'm gonna move this forward so more people can see you from the side. Nope, you're great. Thank you. Okay, what's your name?
Melinda.
Melinda, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming up here. Okay, as Melinda is sitting down, there's a lot of things that are happening that you may not be aware of. Okay, number one is she's wearing shoes. So do you mind if I take your shoe? Okay, so here's a shoe, okay? And you see that there is maybe about 1.5 inches of rubber on the bottom, right? Is that fair to say? And I want to let you know that human beings were designed by God for tactile feel with their feet. It gives us input into our brain. This 1.5 inches of rubber really distorts and dramatically lessens that input. And that's a problem. And also, it actually pushes your heel up a little bit like this, relatively speaking, versus if you were standing bare feet. And when you lift your foot up like that, we're doing what you call plantar flexion, okay? And when you plantar flex, you might think no big deal. It reduces your ability to do something that is the opposite of plantar flexion, called dorsiflexion, which is simply raising our toe to our knee. And you may ask, well, when do I do that? And I will tell you, every time you take a step, you do that. And what's really interesting, I'm going to give you back your shoe, is interesting thing about biomechanics and movement is if you don't move the way you're supposed to, you're going to move a way that you're not supposed to, and there are long-term consequences of that over time. There's also some other things happening here that I want to point out. Most importantly, she is sitting in a position that we would call hip flexion. Okay, so this is hip flexion, and this is hip extension. A huge, perhaps number one correlating factor to low back pain is tight hips. And when you're sitting, you are systemically shortening your hip flexors. So let's say if your hip flexor was intended to be this long, but you sit all the time, it might be this long. And that creates a problem. Another thing that happens is as she's sitting, muscles kind of have, like the body has kind of like pros and cons, and there's opposites. So as she's in hip flexion, there's an opposite correlating side. That's the opposite of flexion, which is, let's say, stretching. Okay? So what is the opposite side of our hips? I think I heard it. Please say that louder.
Glutes.
Glutes. You are absolutely 100% ding, 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 ding. You are correct. Good. Right answer. So, problem is here, imagining your hips are tightening and your glutes are stretching. They're stretching so much that literally 99% of every person that I've had the pleasure of working with is what we call glute dormant, or they have gluteal amnesia. What does that mean? Your butt doesn't work. And if I were to ask you all to get up out of your chairs and walk all the way to the roof and walk up and down 5 times, you would know exactly that I was correct, and I'll tell you why. Your quads would be full of blood. If you were to look at them, you'd be able to see that they'd be all red, and you probably wouldn't feel anything in your butt. It's supposed to be 50-50, but we are quad dominant and glute dormant as a society. A friend of mine, his name is Eric Beard. He was the director of advanced education for the National Academy of Sports Medicine, had a worldwide lecture series called Save Your Back, Get Your Butt in Gear, which is just a kind of an interesting point. Now, as she's sitting here, as we're sitting, okay, perhaps the most important thing is happening, but it all works together. We end up sitting in a position called spinal flexion. So as I stand here, please understand that your spine is strongest when it's neutral. And that means if you stand up nice and straight like you were in the military or maybe taking a picture, there's a natural curve between our butt and our mid-back. It's kind of shaped like that. Our spine is strongest when we are neutral in that natural curve, normal lordotic curve position. It only takes 1 to 2 degrees of flexion, which is the opposite of that. So we're not like this, we're starting to flatten or maybe bend the other way, to to start the very destructive process of herniating a disc in your spine. In fact, Dr. McGill proved that it takes as few as 6,000 flexions of the lumbar spine to herniate a disc. You can kind of think of it as, imagine having a metal hanger in your hand, and you were to kind of bend it forward and back. It wouldn't take long that the color of that hanger would change. And then after a while, you can kind of break it, or it would be greatly diminished and weakened. Our spines are like that in a way. In fact, Dr. McGill estimates that the average human being has a reserve of 25,000 bends of a lumbar spine before we herniate a disc. Kind of interesting, okay? But there are some other things that are happening while she's sitting here, okay? Now, if her spine is flexing, which means that instead of like this, I want you to maybe slouch forward a little bit, pretend you're looking at your computer. So now we've got, if you could do that a little bit more. Good, so now we've got, we all dig in, right? Dig into our keyboard, maybe grab the phone, okay? The spine flattens, it goes into flexion, okay? So earlier I said everything's an opposite. If I flex my bicep, my tricep stretches. If I flex my tricep, my bicep stretches. So here, if her lower back, if her lumbar spine is flexing, what is stretching? What's on the other side of her lower back?
The core.
Yes. Your belly, your abdominals, your core, okay? And it's not exactly stretching, but it's shutting off. It's not working. Did you know that the lumbar spine in and of itself, as I stand here, can only bear a compressive load of 7 pounds of compression and shearing before you would fall flat on your face? But the exception is when we add the musculature of our core and the fascia of our core, which is kind of like saran wrap. It's a fibrous gel-like substance that wraps around muscles in your body. The average spine can bear a load of 700 pounds of a compressive shear force. So what she's doing is, God blessed her with this amazing body that's resilient and powerful, and you kind of take a beating and keep on ticking, etc. But every time we sit, we're shutting it off. It's the equivalent of buying a $300,000 sports car that goes 300 miles per hour, putting it in the garage for 20 years, never using it, and then trying to start it, and it doesn't start. It doesn't work. She is, and we are, as we sit too much, we are untuning or shutting our core right off, okay? Now there's other things that are happening too. Could you please once again over-exaggerate and pretend you were typing on a keyboard or reaching for a phone? Eventually, she starts to flex her thoracic spine or her mid-back. Have you seen people when they're older that their head kind of comes, in the room before they do? Okay? Where people are kind of bent over like that. How many people would like that when they get older? Do we have any takers for that? Me either. Because when you do that for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you lose the ability to do that. That's probably the biggest reason we have so many shoulder injuries. Because the shoulder starts to get displaced, and there's too much load put on the shoulder, labrums and rotator cuffs tear, etc. Her shoulders will also roll forward, even her neck will roll forward. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics of things that are happening when you're sitting. Now what I'd like you to do, if you would please, is aggressively lean forward, and I want you to twist to your right because your phone's right here and pretend you're trying to grab that. Okay, good. If you twist without moving your hips and shoulders together, the destructive force on your lumbar spine increases 200 to 300%. So it's not a good thing. So when you go to a gym and they have those machines that you sit down and you just kind of crank like this, like that by definition, if you were to ask a biomechanist, how can I herniate a disc really easily? That would be a great way to do it. Because that just jams the facets in your lumbar spine and they start to get injured and you feel pain. So a lot of interesting stuff. And we talked a little bit about the shoes. So there's a lot of different things happening when you sit, and I hope you can understand that a little bit. So good stuff with that. And you can go back to your seat. Thank you so much, okay? So, just in kind of a recap, a lot of things happening when you're sitting. We're kind of losing mobility in our ankles which changes the way we walk, which makes us more quad dominant, okay? We are tightening our hips, we're shutting off our glutes, we're flexing our spine, we're shutting off our core, our upper back or mid back is kind of bending forward, our shoulders are rolling forward, our neck is rolling forward, and we're untuning this great and robust stability system that we were born with. So kind of interesting stuff. Now, this is a huge takeaway. And I want you to understand this. Let's say if you were all 10 years old, pain-free, you didn't have 10, 20, 30, 40 years of sitting. If you sit for 50 minutes, you basically have a herniated disc. Because let's say, think of your spine, let's say this is a vertebra. And inside the vertebra is disc material, okay? And when you sit with compression and flexion, okay, and I'm not really concerned with how good your posture is, because you will eventually flex your spine if you sit long enough. What happens is the nucleus starts to worm its way through the inner collagen fibers around your disc, and it hits a nerve, and bam, you've got pain. In fact, the nucleus of the disc is treated by the body as a foreign invader. It doesn't know what it is, and you actually don't even have nerve roots that can feel low back pain until that happens. So if you're working out and you think, oh, I tweaked my back, I better stop, you've already injured yourself, because it was a long process that took that nucleus to go out over all those bends and worm its way through the annulus and those inner collagen fibers to hit a nerve, and you feel pain. And then the body does something that's really crazy, is that once you feel the pain, your body wants to get better at feeling the pain. So it grows more nerve roots. It literally will start growing more nerve roots, so you get better at detecting pain. You actually get better at feeling the pain. And then what happens sometimes is we get a little bit dysfunctional, and we're so good at feeling the pain, we're in pain all of the time. So it's kind of crazy. So it's really easy. Here's the first big lesson, okay? The first thing that you could do to kind of offset that process, and this only takes 5 seconds, okay, is every 30 minutes, you can time it on your watch or your phone or whatever, have an alarm go off. And I'm going to have you do it all right now. Just stand up. And sit back down. You just rehydrated your discs. 5 seconds. So it's very important that what we do today, I want to teach you things you can do in your chair, things that you can do in your cubicle or in your office, or things that you could do at home on your living room or bedroom floor, and certainly things that you could do in the gym. And that right there is enough to make a change. Okay, so I want you to understand that. And so you kind of got that. If you look at the top, it's kind of like, think of the nucleus of your disc and the disc around, the collagen fibers around it, as a tire. And it's kind of like, if there's a hole in the tire, you know, the inner tube starts to stick its way out, and that's what happens with our low backs. So kind of interesting the way that works. So what can we do about it? Well, there's a lot of different things that we can do. Okay, number one, and I'm gonna need a chair. Would you mind giving me that green chair right there? Thank you, and we'll leave it up here. Thanks, appreciate it. One of the biggest things that we do is in the article that I showed with Dr. McGill earlier, he talked about something that was very dramatic called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of the spine. So, pretty dramatic, but I don't know if you know this or not, but the number 2 reason a human being in the United States calls a doctor today is because they have low back pain. And it's only number 2 to the common cold. 80% of people in the United States will miss some time off from work in their life because of low back pain. So maybe it's not too dramatic to call it the apocalypse, because it's an issue. It's an issue. So as human beings, as Americans, we flex and shear our spine. Flexion is that flattening or bending, and shearing is actually the opposite. It's kind of like a pushing from back to front of our spine. Those are two of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Another one is compression. If we're maybe carrying something too heavy, or we're trying to squat with 500 pounds on our back, it's providing a downward compressive force on your spine, which may or may not be more than you can handle. Okay? Particularly if you're sitting all day, you have less capacity to handle it. If you're sitting on machines in a gym, which you should never do because they're scientifically proven to increase interdisc pressure and contribute to this process, you want to stay away from that. But we flex and shear our spines in the United States every 20 minutes. The culprit is getting in and out of a chair. So I want to just take a moment to teach you guys how to do that, okay? So, we're all sitting in our chair. Sorry if I'm interrupting the eating. And what I would like you to do is first slide your butt to the end of the chair, please. Slide it to the end. You can kind of feel the hard part right on your buttocks, okay? I want you to widen your feet, pull your heels a little bit back towards your butt, and I want you to roll your pelvis forward, stay head up, chest up, and lift with your hips and try not to bend forward when you do it. Okay, so we're gonna try that again. I saw some people kind of really lean forward before they came up. We want to try to avoid that, so please go ahead and sit down again. And I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna use the desk because most of you can use a desk, right? So here I am, and if you need to move to see me, let me know, and hopefully Jake will get it on the video. So same thing. We're sitting. Gonna slide our butts to the end of the chair, okay? And now we're gonna put our hands on the desk or table or whatever. Widen your feet, roll your pelvis forward, move your heels back, and now use your hands a little bit and stand straight up without leaning forward. Nice job, nice job. So that could take practice, but the important thing is we're moving through our hips and we're not moving through our spine, okay? Kind of interesting. You know what's really interesting when it comes to low back care and spine care? The number one thing you could do for anybody is get them to do what we call spine sparing, which means that they stop unwittingly hurting themselves without knowing it. They don't realize that every time that they brush their teeth or put their shoes on or get up off the toilet or get off the chair or get in their car or put a golf ball on a tee, that they're actually triggering the very mechanism that hurts them. That when they're sitting on the couch and they bring their knees to their chest, they're in full flexion, they're actually triggering the very mechanism that is causing them their pain in the first place. So, another thing is if you look at this second picture right here, I have one of these in my car. It's like a little balloon that you blow up, and we recommend when you sit in your car, particularly for long drives, you just put that right in the neutral curve of your spine. You can blow it up with the hand pump to get it as full of air or to lower the air as much as you'd like. And what that does is it prevents you from inevitably flexing as you're sitting in your car driving, particularly if you've got a long drive to take. Okay, so something to think about there. Very, very effective. And here are some pictures of it, like on a chair, or a variety of chairs. Could be on your desk chair. You could have one at home, one at the office, one in your car, etc. So those are some really simple things that we can do to make a dramatic difference. Now, we're going to practice a few other things here. Let's say you're in your chair and you just can't get out. Maybe you're at a board meeting, maybe you're coding, maybe you have a telesales job. For whatever reason, you're in your chair, you're really busy. I hope you can do the 5-second thing up and down, but I want to just tell you a few other really simple things that you can do that really make a difference, okay? And we'll practice them all together if you'd like. So, first thing we can do is spend some time just sitting at the end of our chair. It changes your posture and it makes a difference. Okay? Another thing that you could do is, I'm going to have you all do this for me, okay? So you can lift your one buttock up and kind of lean over to the right. Lift your other buttock over. Good. Kind of lift one up and lean with it. I'm really exaggerating for teaching purposes, but The sports medicine practitioners that I work with, they could do it in the chair and you wouldn't even know it if you were looking right at them and talking it. Another thing you could do is kind of sit back a little bit further into your chair. Our bodies and our spines thrive off movement. What kills them is not moving and inactivity, which is why, and I'll be happy to elaborate on this if you would like, standing desks are not the answer. Sitting on a stability ball is not the answer. Everything that I'm saying is undisputed scientifically in sports medicine today. So what you can do here is I actually do want you to flex your spine, push your low back in the chair, and then roll your pelvis the other way. We're getting movement in the spine. Spine thrives off movement, and we want to do that. We call these few techniques, and there are more, active sitting. And just a simple thing that you can do right in your own chair, okay? Let's slide this here. So, what can we do about it? Part 2. We talked about getting in and out of the chair. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do, in just a moment, let me give you the go-ahead, is the average human being flexes their spine, flattens it or bends it the wrong way 4,400 times a day, but we only extend our spine the opposite way 200 times a day. It's that gross inequality that could be the leading cause of why low back pain and low back surgeries are so prevalent, such a big problem in the United States. So what I want to do is show you some really, really simple strategies on how you could kind of reverse that or offset that, okay? So the first thing I'm going to show you is something called I'm going to show you a back bend, and this is actually an easier way to do it on the wall. But I'm going to stand up. I'm going to make sure my feet are nice and flat, and I want to make sure they have full contact with the ground. I'm going to push my hips forward as far as I can. And then what I'm going to do is really push forward and bend my head back and come back to center. I'm going to do that 2 more times for illustration purposes. My feet are flat. I'm going to push my hips forward and bend back, pick out a spot in the ceiling, make a note of it, come back to center, and do it again and really kind of push forward and bend back. Now the important thing is my goal is with flat feet, I need to get my hips forward as far as I can. And when I bend back, I am not bending back for any other purpose than to make it a little bit easier to push my hips forward. And if I can do that 10 times every hour, or let's say every 2 hours, that can go a really long way. If that was all that you did towards greatly offsetting the negative consequences of sitting. So let's go ahead and stand up. I'd like you to try it. Remember, it's about hip movement. Please give yourself some space. Try not to hit the person next to you. We're going to keep your feet flat. It does take practice, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to really push the hips forward, bend back, and really push them forward, because it's all about how far you can get the hips to go forward. Go ahead and try that a few times. And I'd like you to raise your hand if that feels good.
At the same time?
Yeah, that takes some extra control, motor control. Good. So guys, this is a great tool. Remember this, frequency beats intensity. Real change can only occur through multiple inputs over time. What I mean is if you have low back pain and you're trying to prevent it, it's not about going to the gym 3 times a week and working really hard. You will fail. It is about doing little things like this throughout the day on a regular basis. Everything that we're doing, remember this, the brain predominates in all things. So what we're doing is we're training the brain. We're training the brain. It's really important. Now, let's say if you're just having trouble figuring out the back bends and you just can't get your hips to move forward. Okay, an easy thing that you can do is we can do what's called a prone prop on a wall. So I'm kind of standing here with my hands and forearms on a wall. Effortlessly, I'm just going to let my hips fall to the wall and bend my head back. And I can kind of come up to where I started, let my hips fall to the wall, bend my head back, And I can do that. Once again, I'm getting extension to offset the flexion. And you can try that if you would like. We're going to give you a few other tools as well.
What's the opposite? Like if your work requires extended hours of your standing, then what needs to be done for the right posture?
Can you repeat that question?
If your job requires extended period of you standing up,
Okay.
What you can do, because at times you get pain in your
Sure.
legs.
Well, so the question was, is if your job requires you to stand for an extended period of time, and maybe you have some aches and pains with that, there are some really, really simple things you could do. I have to show you this. It looks a little funny, but it's such a beautiful exercise. We call this a 3D matrix. Hips to overhead, sagittal plank. Sorry for the long description. But what I do is I stand up straight with good posture, okay? And I make a 90-degree angle with my lower arms and upper arms. I kind of do that back bend that we just did. I drive my elbow to the back wall and my fist to the ground. You can also do this at the bar after you've had several shots and just heard a Bills game. I'm sure it will work. Okay, so notice my hips are coming forward. I'm driving my elbows to the back wall, fist to the ground. You know what's beautiful about this? I'm getting extension in the lumbar spine, extension in the thoracic spine, and I'm retilting my shoulder blades in the right direction, which helps us to dramatically improve our shoulder health and kind of offset the negative consequences of sitting. But another thing that you could do is you just need movement. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Walking, even if it's for 5 minutes, is great. Hip shifting is really important. There are some other things. But I'm gonna stay focused on sitting because more people have issues with sitting than standing. I'll be happy to talk to you further about that after the workshop. Okay, guys, this is a real easy one. I want you to watch me first before you do it. Let's say if you have more than 5 seconds. Let's say you have 30 seconds. All you need to do, I'll turn around, is stand up and reach your arms to the ceiling. Hold it for 10 seconds. I'm decompressing my spine. And then if I reach up a little higher, bring my arms back, and then you do some really deep breathing for 10 seconds. I can sit down, and I will dramatically decrease the pressure on my spine. So we have standing up and down 5 seconds. Maybe that takes 30 seconds. All of these things done regularly throughout the day, back bends kind of make a really big difference. Now, this is a great exercise. We're going to get into the importance of walking in a bit, but let's say you'd like to walk, but you have low back pain, or one of your employees has low back pain when they walk. I'm going to use this desk right here. You guys can stay right there. There's a beautiful exercise called a park bench decompression. It's titled that way because the park bench is the perfect height, and people like to walk in parks, okay? What I can do here is I'm putting my hands on the desk, or it could be a table, or it could be a bar, or it could be a lot of different things, okay? And I'm going to kind of put all the weight on my hands and my arms and my shoulders. So all the weight's there. There's actually pressure on my shoulders. And then what I'm going to do is just, without effort, just let my hips fall forward and bend back. Now what I'm doing here is I'm decompressing my spine and I'm getting extension at the same time. We never hold this for more than 30 seconds. Would you guys like to get up and try that? Remember, I'm watching you as you get up, head and chest up, spread those legs out, lower your pelvis, stand up. Okay? And once again, okay, I'll kind of try to do it here. If you need to turn and take a look at me, you're putting all of the weight on your arms, and you're just letting your hips effortlessly fall towards the table, and just lean your head back a little bit. Hold that for 60 seconds. For many, many people, if they walk and they have pain and they do this for 60 seconds, they can go walk for another 10 minutes without pain, and then they can do it again. We are building resiliency and robustness into your spine. Okay, hey, nice job, guys. Can you do that again? You were doing it perfect. Okay, very well done. Look at that. So very, very nice. Jake, can you get a picture of that? That's good. We're going to make you famous. We'll have you sign some marketing forms. No, I'm just kidding. All good. Thank you. So now I'm going to fast forward a little bit through the rest of this presentation because we got a little bit of a late start, more people than expected, and some people came in late. So I've got to try to wrap this up. It's about 42 minutes after. Can you guys give me another 10 minutes? I'll do my best to honor that, okay? So what's really interesting is how does core training or core stability and endurance figure into the equation, okay? Everything that I've talked about so far can offset the negative consequences of sitting. But to be able to offset it and keep it, let me explain to you how so many people, the vast majority of people who have low back pain, get injured. Because sitting untunes their core, it becomes lax and not as stiff as it's supposed to be. And when it's not stiff and it becomes lax, little micro movements occur, and those micro movements cause injury and feed right into what I showed you earlier, the disc material kind of worming its way out to hit a nerve. Okay? So it's kind of interesting. It's interesting how that works. So stiffness is important because our body is a series of joints stacked on top of each other, and contrary to popular opinion, or maybe what some people in other modalities of exercise don't understand, is not all joints are made for mobility. Some joints are made for mobility, some joints are made for stability. Well, your lumbar spine, I'm going to call it a joint, is made for stability. You need a certain amount of stiffness so it doesn't become lax, so there are no micro movements, so you don't get hurt. Have you ever heard somebody say, maybe a family member, I hurt my back shaving my legs? Or I hurt my back getting out of the tub. I hurt my back picking up a pencil out of the ground. What I want you to know is actually that's not true. Remember, there's that 25,000 bends. There was probably 70,000 things that they did that didn't register, and picking up that pencil from the ground was just a straw that broke the camel's back. It's kind of equivalent to how many people here work at Roswell Park? It's kind of like somebody saying, that last cigarette is why I got cancer. No, it was the 40,000 before that were a very important part of the process. So I want you to understand that, and that's why core training and core stability is an essential part. So there's this exercise called wall walking. I understand when you're at your offices and desks at work, you might not all be able to get on the ground and do core work, but some of you can, and those who can should. So I'm going to show you an exercise called wall walking. I'm going to stand facing the wall, moving my feet back a little bit. I'm going to kind of squeeze my butt, pull my shoulders down, and stiffen up my stomach as if somebody was going to punch me in the belly. Keeping my shoulders down, I'm just going to kind of walk up the wall like this. And it might take a few times, short strides, but we can start to get some stiffness in our core while you're at work, in your office, if you could just find an open wall. Okay? Just a simple strategy that you can do in a hotel room, you can do if you're traveling, things like that. So, I was going to demonstrate some exercises. We don't have the time to do that, but I'm going to at least tell you what they are. This exercise is called the cat camel. Many of you, perhaps most of you, have seen it. And you may not know this, but when you wake up in the morning, you're probably 1/2 an inch to 3/4 of an inch taller than you are at any other time of the day. The reason that is our lumbar spines are 200 to 300% more hydrated when you first wake up in the morning than any other time of the day. And so if you wake up and you're stiff, you need to kind of pump some of the water and hydration out of it. It's kind of a fine line because later in the day you don't have enough water. So what you can do is you can do this cat camel exercise, and if we need to do a follow-up workshop, we'd be happy to take everybody through that. And what this does is when you do this exercise, what I would tell you is let the breathing drive the exercise, stay in constant motion, you're not stopping at the top or the bottom. And this is not an end range exercise. More isn't better, better is better. It's not about going up as high as you can or as low as you can. You deliberately want to stay in the mid ranges and not go to the end ranges. The next exercise here is, you guys, this is magical. This exercise right here is magical. And I'm going to demonstrate really quickly an exercise that is so simple it will blow your mind. So on Monday of this week, I was working with a man at his home who had terrible low back pain. He's 69 years old. He's a big, very well-built guy. His wife told me that he cried. It was the first time in her life that she ever saw him cry because his back pain was that much. So I met with him and I said, what is your pain on a scale of 6 to 10 and where is the pain located? And then I taught him how to properly get down on the ground without flexing his spine. Okay, so there's a little process to this. I had him lay down like this, turning the ankles out, relaxing his butt, putting his forehead into his knuckles, and just breathe for 4 minutes. So, what's interesting is when you're in that position, it gives us an opportunity to do 3 really important things. You're doing the opposite of flexion. Gravity is giving us very gentle extension. His pain went from a 6 to a 3 in 4 minutes. Pretty cool. His pain also went from his thigh into his lower back, which is great because that gives us a positive direction of preference. It tells us that we're on the right path. So you can do that lying down like this, or you could use one fist, or you could use 2 fists, or you can get up in this prone prop-like position. And for most people who have low back pain, if they simply do this, this will make their pain go away. And what does that tell us? It tells us it's disc, it tells us it's sciatica, and it tells us that we can get these guys better if we could teach them the right exercises, if they can do them correctly or competently, and if they can do them frequently enough. And that's another thing, guys. Let's talk about frequency. Imagine if you had a debilitating chronic disease, and I had a pill, and I said to you, take this pill 4 times a day, every 6 hours, and you'll have no pain whatsoever, and you'll be able to do anything you want to do. Okay? These exercises are the pill. But if you don't take them frequently enough, and you're not doing them competently enough, or correctly enough, or good enough form of technique, they will fail. So that's the first thing we ask people, are you doing the exercises? Let's watch you do the exercises to make sure you're doing them correctly, and are you doing them frequently enough? And if they don't, it's not going to work. Okay? Science doesn't discriminate. Doesn't really matter how much money you make, how busy you are, how much stress is in your life, our bodies respond to certain things. So, I'm going to fly through this. This is a great exercise that you may have seen before. It's called the bird dog. Really a great exercises. These next 3 exercises were specifically chosen because they have been scientifically proven to put the least amount of stress on your lumbar spine and get the most activation out of your core. And by the way, 13 out of 32 NFL football teams do this before every game because it gives them stiffness for an extra few hours, which allows them to perform better and decreases the chance of getting an injury. So trust me, these exercises even work for some of the best athletes in the world. This is called the bird dog. This is called the McGill curl up. It's not the picture on the bottom, it's the picture on the top. Notice her hands are under her lumbar spine. We can also implement under her lumbar spine, so she is unable to flex her spine. This is called a side bridge. So I'm just showing this quickly because we're running out of time. Walking. Walking is absolutely critical for low back health. So even people that are in the most pain, they're recommended tolerable interval walking. Correctly, what does that mean? It means you're standing up tall, head up, chest up, you're walking fast, and you're swinging through your shoulders like you mean business. Why is that important? It's counterintuitive. Let's say if you had a lot of low back pain, you might think, I'm going to walk slow, right? Well, actually, that puts more compressive pressure on your discs. Walking fast takes off that compression, and when you walk, you're actually working on ankle mobility, hip mobility, and you're actually flossing your spine from through neurology. So it's kind of pretty interesting. I think that is. These are just some extra exercises that you can do that are good. Beth, we're going to be having a core class, so we could take you through these exercises. A lot of this information I got out of this book. And that's myself and Dr. McGill and my business partner Brandon and some of the people that we've learned from. And again, our company does strength conditioning, physical therapy, and nutrition. I'm grateful that you came. I will be happy to do my best to answer any questions, but before I do that, please make sure that you printed your name neatly. I have your name. If you would like to talk to me, circle and I'll call you. If you don't circle, I won't call you. I'll get this out to you. And at this point, I am going to ask, we do this for free to volunteer for the community. If you like this presentation, you thought it was worthwhile and helpful, I will ask you to write us a 5-star Google review, because that does help us get the word out and help people to find us so we can help them. So, questions, please.
I have one. You talked in the beginning about shoes and how that's kind of a hindrance to the biofeedback.
Yes.
So I guess in my mind, the more supportive shoes you have, the better it is for your lower back, or that's sort of how I've been conditioned to think. So
Sure.
is that a sound recommendation, or do you feel like the minimalist shoes are?
It's actually not true that like the thicker or more supported shoe, the better for your back. There may be other. Dr. McGill's favorite answer to every question is it depends on the person. Okay. And you may have an arch in your foot or some other things that you need to wear a certain type of shoe. But what's one very interesting thing about low back pain is that if you massage your feet, which we do with like a simple foam roller, people's low backs get better because it increases that neural foldback. It actually wakes up your brain. There's a whole bunch of benefits to our cognitive thinking, cognitive performance, okay? So a great thing to do is, you guys, this is really great, is get in your bare feet and just walk around your backyard. It does things with ions and energy, and it just feels good. But for most people, unless there's a special medical or musculoskeletal thing going on, those high heels or even thick rubber shoes with high heels. Now you guys know there's a lot of money spent in advertising sneakers, right? Nike, Adidas. There is not one study that's ever been done that shows that footwear reduces injury. Not one. Did you know in the 50s the Olympic runners used to run on their bare feet? And they had big, thick, muscular, hypertrophied feet because they were meant to have. That's what we're meant to have. We're not meant to like kind of squish them and take the input away from them. Did you know that if I were to put a 2-inch rubber glove on both of your hands, you'd be mentally retarded in 2 months? Because your brain thrives off that tactile input, the steering wheel, the phone, petting your dog, shaking a hand, touching a computer, touching your phone. Our brains thrive. We need that to live. We would actually show degradation of our brain, loss of cognitive function in a way that you could measure through an MRI of the brain if we lost the input of our hands. And make no mistake, our feet is similar to that. Don't be shy, guys. And also, if you don't feel comfortable asking me a question in person, I will be happy to answer your question if you come to me privately or call me. Any other questions? Did you guys like this? Did you think it was helpful? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you so much for coming. I'm grateful for you guys being here. I hope this helped.